Gary and Linda LaBombard are first in line, showing up more than 4 hours early to see Donald Trump in Anderson, South Carolina.
It's my first time ever voting in my life. I'm 70 years old.
How come you haven't voted before?
Didn't see anybody that was worthwhile to vote for except up to now.
And LaBombard is all aboard the Trump train. I asked him and others about Donald Trump using the September 11th terrorist attacks in his campaigning and claiming he would have been able to prevent the attacks had he been in office. How do you feel that he's making statements like that?
If Donald says it, I think it. That's how much I believe in it.
Trump says his tough immigration policies would have thwarted the 9/11 attacks.
I want you all to know.
And while he says he isn't blaming President Bush for the attacks, he certainly is pointing out that he was president at the time. Does that bother you?
It does not. He was in office when that happened, unfortunately. I did support George Bush. I am a Republican, and I support Donald Trump.
Donald Trump's statements and insinuations are notable because in the 14-plus years since the 9/11 attacks, casting any kind of blame on American political leaders, both Republican and Democrat, about what happened on that horrible day has, for the most part, not been done.
It's the truth. I mean, it happened when he was in office.
So you think it's okay, though, to make that part of the campaign?
No, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that he's a little off on that.
Woo! Go Donald!
Good evening. We begin tonight in South Carolina, where Donald Trump is campaigning while he's in the middle of a war of words with Jeb Bush online and on TV. A feud over the worst day in recent American history. Trump and Bush are sparring over the 9/11 terror attacks and what George W. Bush did or did not do in Trump's estimation. Now, this started last week when Trump pointed out that the World Trade Center came down during Bush's, quote, reign, as Trump said, a criticism Jeb Bush called, quote, pathetic on Twitter. The feud continued through the weekend. Here's what Trump said on Fox News when he was asked that flat out if he blames George W. Bush for 9/11.
Jeb said, we were safe with my brother. We were safe. Well, the World Trade Center just fell down. Now, am I trying to blame him? I'm not blaming anybody. But the World Trade Center came down. So when he said we were safe, that's not safe. I am extremely, extremely tough on illegal immigration. I'm extremely tough on people coming into this country. I believe that if I were running things, I doubt those families would have, I doubt that those people would have been in the country.
And here's what Jeb Bush said on CNN's State of the Union.
My brother responded to a crisis, and he did it as you would hope a president would do. He united the country, he organized our country, and he kept us safe. And there's no denying that. The great majority of Americans believe that, and I don't know why he keeps bringing this up. It doesn't show that he's a serious person as it relates to being commander-in-chief and being the architect of a foreign policy.
Trump is continuing this line on Twitter. Today, he linked to a 3-year-old op-ed from the New York Times about briefings George W. Bush got in the weeks leading up to 9/11. Trump also tweeted this, quote, Jeb is fighting to defend a catastrophic event. I am fighting to make sure it doesn't happen again. Jeb is too soft. We need tougher and sharper. As we say often, Trump is not letting up, and his poll numbers are holding up. In a new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, Trump is at his highest level of support yet, 25%. Dr. Ben Carson basically tied with 22% within the margin of error. Marco Rubio's in third with 13%, with the rest of the field in single digits. Now, whatever you think of Trump's strategy, it's clearly working. Is there a tipping point? Are his supporters buying his recent politicizing of the deadliest, most tragic day in recent American history? Gary Tuchman is in South Carolina, where Trump is campaigning tonight. He joins us now. Did Trump mention 9/11 at this event?
Anderson, he did not, but he did mention something in the speech that was a little bit different. There were about 5,000 people in the Civic Center in Anderson, South Carolina, and he asked everyone, do you like the Second Amendment? And everyone cheered and hollered. And then he said, well, President Obama wants to sign an executive order to take your guns away. And everyone hoot and hollered. Of course, there's zero indication for the White House that any such thing is being considered, but there were many people who left this auditorium convinced that President Obama wanted to take their guns away after Donald Trump said it. Donald Trump criticized President Obama. He criticized Hillary Clinton. He criticized the home state Senator Lindsey Graham, who's also running for president, Republican presidential nomination. He also criticized Jeb Bush, but he did not mention George W. Bush. He did not mention what happened in 9/11. Nevertheless, many of the people who were here heard a few things from Donald Trump over the last few days. Gary and Linda LaBombard are first in line, showing up more than 4 hours early to see Donald Trump in Anderson, South Carolina.
It's my first time ever voting in my life. I'm 70 years old.
How come you haven't voted before?
Didn't see anybody that was worthwhile to vote for except up to now.
And La Bombard is all aboard the Trump train. I asked him and others about Donald Trump using the September 11th terrorist attacks in his campaigning and claiming he would have been able to prevent the attacks had he been in office. How do you feel that he's making statements like that?
If Donald says it, I think it. That's how much I believe in it.
Trump says his tough immigration policies would have thwarted the 9/11 attacks.
I want you all to know
And while he says he isn't blaming President Bush for the attacks, he certainly is pointing out that he was president at the time. Does that bother you? That he
It
says
does
that?
not. He was in office when that happened. Unfortunately, I did support George Bush. I am a Republican, and I support Donald Trump.
Donald Trump's statements and insinuations are notable because in the 14-plus years since the 9/11 attacks, casting any kind of blame on American political leaders, both Republican and Democrat, about what happened on that horrible day has, for the most part, not been done.
It's the truth. I mean, it happened when he was in office.
So you think it's okay, though, to make that part of the campaign?
No, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that he's a little off on that one.
Woo! Go Donald!
But Erica Pardee, who travels to Trump's rallies to sell Trump souvenirs, likes the real estate tycoon's approach.
I personally feel like it's fine. He's a very bold and brash businessman, and he brings that to the table as far as his campaign running in the for the White House, and I think it's fine.
What a crowd!
Although most people at this Trump rally are committed to him, there are some here who say they are still weighing their options.
He does overstate a lot of things, and then he understates. And of course, we've got to quit the name calling. I mean, literally, let's be grown-ups about it. Let's not call people names, calling people stupid, fat, ugly, dumb, morons. You're going to have to work with these morons.
The fact that Trump did not mention George W. Bush or September 11th tonight, any chance that might indicate he's done talking about it?
Donald Trump, Anderson, is very good at mentioning things that work to his political advantage, so it is notable that he did not mention it on this evening. He's also been very accessible to members of the news media like me before and after his rallies. So today, as he came out, we wanted to ask him, are you planning to talk about George W. Bush, the events of 9/11? They pulled up his limousine right near this building, and when we asked that question, he was as quiet as a church mouse. He didn't answer it.
All right, Gary, we'll see. Thanks very much. Joining me now, CNN political commentator Peter Beinart, who has an article in The Atlantic today saying Trump is right about 9/11. Also, CNN counterterrorism analyst Philip Mudd, a former FBI and CIA senior official. So, Peter, what do you mean? You talked about in the run-up to 9/11 that Trump is essentially right about George W. Bush. In what way?
Right. We don't know whether Bush could have stopped 9/11, obviously, but I think we can ask the question, did he do everything he could have given what he knew at the time? And if you look at his own former counterterrorism advisors, people like Richard Clarke, who was the counterterrorism czar at the National Security Council, he wrote in his book that he was basically desperately trying to get top Bush officials to focus on the bin Laden threat. He was so despondent about their unwillingness to that he actually considered asking he has to be reassigned from the issue in the summer because they were paying no attention to him. You find the same thing people at the CIA in Kirk Eichenwald's reporting that they also were so despondent about the fact that they could not get the Bush administration's attention on this that they also considered resigning their posts. That's how difficult it was to focus the administration, despite the fact that the president got 36 warnings about the potential of bin Laden striking the United States between when he came in January 2001 and September 11th.
Phil, I mean, Peter's argument isn't that Bush could have stopped 9/11 definitively from happening, but his administration could have done more to stop it. The White House officials were more concerned with Iraq, for instance, than with al-Qaeda. Do you buy that?
Not so much. Look, I think you have to take this in context. There is a fair judgment that says back and I was at the White House in 2001 in the Bush administration, detail from the CIA that there was too much focus, for example, on North Korea, Iran, and missile defense. But you look at the 14 years after 9/11, you look at 100-plus countries involved in the coalition to fight al-Qaeda, armed drones by the CIA to kill al-Qaeda members. That would never have been considered by President Clinton or by President Bush before 9/11. You look at the amount of dollars, the fact that we fought 2 wars, to think that in the 7, 8, 9 months of the Bush administration leading up to 9/11, that more focus on al-Qaeda could have somehow prevented a tragedy, I think is an insinuation that doesn't hold water. 2 questions, Anderson. 1, Should the administration have focused more on terrorism? Sure. 2, separate question, let's not confuse it. Would that have made a difference in the tragedy that led to the deaths of nearly 3,000? I don't think so.
Well, but Richard Clark says it could have, and the example he points to is what the Clinton administration did in 1999, when there were warnings about a millennium attack around the turn of the century, and they had daily meetings. Clinton demanded daily meetings between his national security advisor, head of the FBI, CIA. They basically demanded that the people inside those agencies really kind of shake the leaves in terms of what was going on, and they managed to capture this guy Ahmed Rassam, who was coming in across the Canadian border. So he thinks that if there had been more attention from the top, maybe, remember, Zacarias Moussaoui was arrested that summer in Minnesota. The FBI couldn't even check his laptop.
Although, Peter, arguably, I mean, there was an attack in '93 on the World Trade Center. There was the, bombings in East Africa.
Right,
so
right.
There were other, administrations which, you could paint with the same brush.
Absolutely. The USS Cole in October 2000, the end of right. So no, I'm not claiming that the Bush administration could have stopped it. I'm claiming that there was a possibility they could have stopped it, and they didn't do everything they reasonably could have been expected to do.
Phil, were signs missed? I mean, a lot of people point to the president's daily brief that just the summer prior to 9/11, that talked about the possibility of an attack or a certain kind of attack, and the title of the president's daily brief is Bin Laden determined to strike the U.S. Is it fair to point to that, or is that kind of cherry-picking intelligence reports?
Cherry-picking. Look, if you look at the president's daily brief, and I looked at terrorism articles for 10, 15 years that went into the daily brief for the president, you've got to put that in the context of warnings about things like North Korean missile systems, about Iranian missile systems, about economic developments, about global health issues like what we saw last year, Ebola. We're looking at one article saying the president should have taken a general warning saying Al-Qaeda is looking at us, saying a month before 9/11, the president should have taken a hard left in American foreign policy to react to this. Let me give you a lesson about intelligence, especially counterterrorism intelligence. Who is it? Where is it? When is it? How is it? That information that the president received in the summer provided a warning that should have led the White House to say, we need to think more generally about policy on Al-Qaeda. But it was not specific enough to allow any president, including President Bush, to say, I'm going to change the world to chase this organization. It wasn't specific enough.
Peter, just on the politics of this, do you think it's smart for Donald Trump to do this? I mean, it's clearly, in some ways, there's the belief about this actual issue, but it also is linking Jeb Bush to his brother.
Right. I'm not sure it's that smart for Donald Trump to be doing this. I think you see, as your reporting showed, he's backing away from it a little bit because George W. Bush is popular among Republicans. But I think Donald Trump also just desperately likes to get his name in lights, and this has gotten him to be the front of the center of national attention again for a couple of days.
And also for those who say that he's telling it like it is or speaking his mind, this certainly argues for that as well, whether or not it's politically feasible or wise. Peter Beinart, thank you. Phil Mudd, always good to have you on.
Thank you.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism